What's good, YouTube? Crown Jewel from Crown Jewel Boxing, back with a gem. On my way to Taylor Garcia. Danny Garcia is promoting the card in Philly tonight, so I'm on my way to check that out. But I could not take this ride up to Philly and not take advantage of this time and talk about the undisputed light heavyweight championship of the world that I just took some time out to watch. Dmitry Bivol versus Artur Beterbiev. I didn't make a video pre-fight about it, but I did have Bivol pick to win. I was on Knockout Boxing 86 TV the other night, and I left it in the chat that I felt like Bivol will win, and I even put why I felt like Bivol would win. And after watching the fight, I feel like Bivol won. Beterbiev had his moments, but Bivol, for the most part, outboxed Beterbiev clearly the first 3, maybe 4 rounds, and the first 2 minutes of just about, I don't know, 9 rounds. And then, you know, there's probably 4 or 5 rounds where Beterbiev came on real strong in the last 30 seconds. But even in those rounds, with the exception of 1 or 2 rounds, Bivol did the bulk of the work in most of those rounds, even at times standing his ground and landing 4 and 5 punch combinations against Beterbiev. Did he hurt Beterbiev? Yes. Did Beterbiev hurt Bivol? Yes. But I think there's no coincidence. You had Beterbiev's corner telling him going into the 10th round that he needed a knockout to win. They weren't saying that to motivate him. They were telling him the truth. He was losing the fight, in my opinion. And this is where it makes me think of the other side of boxing. You know what I mean? Where it's kind of an ugly thing to look at when we talk about fights being fixed or, you know, people being robbed. And even though it wasn't, I don't think, you know, it was a big, a horrible decision where, like, I can say it's robbery because I can say, like, Bivol beat him so bad. It wasn't that. It wasn't no Shockey Foster robbery. But I feel like he won, and I feel like fights can and do get fixed. If you look at the telecast, I don't know his name, but the English-sounding commentator, he was completely biased the entire fight. He's one of those commentators that will literally tell whomever's watching the fight they're not seeing what they're seeing in the fight. No matter what Bivol was doing, Bivol is getting tired. The pressure is getting to him. He lands good shots. He makes no mention of it. When he does mention, it's like, yeah, you know, he's winning right now, or that was good, but you can just feel the pressure getting to him, or you can feel the fight changing. He was just completely biased. And then another part of the telecast makes you think, if directly after the decision, after a really, really good fight like we just saw, the commentator spent the first 15 minutes after the fight not talking about how great of a fight it was or what happened in the fight, but justifying how and why a decision can go that way. If you gotta talk for 15, 20 minutes to feel like to feel the need to justify a decision going the opposite way that it actually went, that means you also felt like it was a bad decision. Because if you thought it was a good decision, there's no need to defend it. It stands for itself. The only way you start going on a 15-minute rant about trying to soften the blow and tell people why the decision could have went how it went and how it's not a robbery lets you know it was a robbery, and the people working for the company are making it their point to try to convince you otherwise. It's almost like the powers that be got the result they wanted. I kind of, even at the polls, you know, Beterbiev was favored, but not a big favorite. I was kind of wondering in the media how they, you know, had him such a big, you know, favorite in the fight. And Bivol and anytime you heard boxing people talk, Bivol was like such an underdog, with the exception, I will say, the OG, Bozianis, he picked Bivol, but most of them were just like Beterbiev was just going to steamroll through him because he's something we've never seen. And I didn't believe that at all. On the flip side, I felt Bivol was special. And I watched him. I'm not saying Jean Pascal was the fighter that Beterbiev is, but I watched Bivol in that Jean Pascal fight, and I was up close and personal. I was actually in Bivol's corner as an inspector that night. I watched him deal in moments where Jean Pascal came at him in reckless abandon, and every time he was able to use that shotgun jab and actually weather the storm. So I knew he could deal with, even though he didn't do it as consistently as we knew Beterbiev was, I knew that Bivol could deal with those moments of extreme pressure and big shots coming from odd angles, because early in his career, I was in his corner when he fought Jean Pascal when I saw it. And that's exactly what I feel like happened tonight. But I'll get to why I feel like fights can and do get legally fixed at times. And that's crazy to say that, use the word fixed and legally. But we all know, you know, sometimes you can tweak things and, you know, come so close to doing something dishonest or dishonorable, but not cross the line legally. And that's kind of what I feel like happens in boxing, and I'll tell you how. Boxing scoring is subjective. Judges can score a fight based on what they prefer to see. Some judges may be really into masterful boxing, so they kind of, you know, traditionally tend to score fights in, you know, favor of guys that box really well and show ring generalship. Other judges are really impressed and intrigued by aggression, effective aggression, and clean punches. Everybody should reward clean punches, but that doesn't always happen. And so the judges that typically, you know, these judges have habits and track records. So somebody like a promoter, a sanctioning body that wants a certain person to fight, to win, all they have to do is schedule judges that typically reward their style of fighting. Like, I can go, you know, to the judges that scored most of Floyd Mayweather's big fights. They obviously were, you know, guys that favored clean boxing, good defense, didn't really penalize ring movement, and, you know, didn't reward the aggressor as much, you know. And you would take them, if you have a guy that boxes well and you want him to do well, you make sure those judges judge that fight. On the flip side, you can go get the judges that frequently give fights to aggressive fighters. And if you have an aggressive fighter and you want the aggressive fighter to win, then you schedule those judges for that fight. And as long as your guy is able to make it the distance, you got a pretty good, you know, hypothesis on, you know, who's going to get the decision based on the habits of the judges. So if boxing, which I don't think it can happen, is one of the things that makes boxing beautiful, but also one of the most frustrating, that they don't have a singular way of scoring fights or a criteria that every judge has to follow, like the amateurs had back in the day, which is just punches landed in scoring positions. But as long as pro boxing is the way it is, you're going to have flawed decisions. You're going to be able to manipulate the situation if you're powerful enough, because of what I just said to you. Learning and knowing the habits of the popular judges in boxing and scheduling them accordingly. And I kind of think that's what happened to Dmitry Bivol tonight. Can I say, oh, it was horrible? I can't, because it wasn't a wide margin. But, you know, I don't think you can accuse somebody of slight robbery, you know what I mean? Like, he didn't take 10,000 from me, he took 100. Like, you know, when you're on the wrong end of something being taken away from you, you're going to feel strongly about it either way. So I'm kind of torn, you know what I mean? I don't want to say robbery, because I usually don't call fights robberies unless they're like Oshaki Foster, where there's no doubt one guy just wasn't in the fight. That's usually the only time I like to say robbery, because I know boxing scoring is subjective. I know the judges are human. I know they can legally reward what they prefer as opposed to, you know, what I think I'm seeing. But as much as I understand it, it's extremely frustrating too, because when I see somebody put on a master performance like I just did with Dmitry Bivol, and for probably 70% of that fight being able to tame that beast and being able to weather the storm, the 30% of the fight that he didn't tame the beast, come on, man. I've been saying for a long time, I came up around a whole lot of, I wouldn't say a whole lot, but some really, really good Hall of Fame, actually, light heavyweights. So I think I know a really good light heavyweight when I see one. And why I'm saying that, Khalil Cole out of Jersey City, New Jersey, is going to be one of them. He's on his way. But I spent extensive time with Virgil Hill, 5-time light heavyweight champion of the world, Olympic silver medalist. Matthew Saad Muhammad, former WBC light heavyweight champion of the world, one of the most exciting fighters in the history of the sport. And Dwight Muhammad Kawi, another Hall of Famer, multi-time light heavyweight cruiserweight champion of the world, tough as nails, went toe-to-toe for as long as it lasted with Big George Foreman, and he stood all of 5'7". So I think I have a pretty good trained eye for a good light heavyweight. And I say a great light heavyweight. And I think I've always said from that time I met him at what was then, I think, the Taj Mahal, Atlantic City, New Jersey. He was fighting in a main event against Jean Pascal, and I was working for the New Jersey State Athletic Commission. I'll put pictures up if y'all want. Working his corner as an inspector. And before the fight even happened, when we were back in the dressing room, and I'm watching Dmitry Bivol warm up. And at this time, I knew he was Eastern European, or he was from, you know, that's where he's from. I looked at him, you know, in his face, he looks Asian. You know, those are very close regions, so, you know. But, you know, that was how I looked, you know, from first sight, just looking at his optics. So I expected a certain style from him. I expected a certain level of athleticism. Then he begins to do dynamic stretching and warm up with a strength and conditioning coach. And I'm like, this dude is super athletic. Like, he's not your typical Eastern European. And then he gloves up and starts hitting the pads. And I'm like, this dude got rhythm. He can box. He's nothing like most Eastern European fighters you see. This is before the fight, going into the fight. So much so, I had a conversation, slightly, you know, short when you're in the dressing room, you don't talk too much. But I actually, you know, told his people while they were talking that I spent extensive time around Virgil Hill, you know, a legendary light heavyweight champion. I'm like, his jab reminds me of Virgil's. It's just like a telephone pole jab. Like some, you know, him, Bruce Seldon Sr., like guys that had jabs that would just make guys not come to them. And they're just really throwing jabs. I said that about Dmitry Bivol. And from that moment, I felt he was special. And his career, you know, has shown that, culminating with that huge victory over Canelo. And I thought, you know, he would be rewarded, you know, by being a special fighter, taking on all comers, staying in one weight division like a throwback fighter, defending his title, and willingly getting in there with the big bad wolf, who, you know, most people thought, who had 100% knockout ratio, put his title on the line. And actually, you know, his star power was a little higher than Beterbiev's coming into this fight. You know, so kind of give him an opportunity to come up, but also, you know, you're going after undisputed. And it just sours, you know, sours my mouth to see what I think is just a bad decision. Like I said, I struggle with calling it I can't say robbery, because it wasn't, you know, he didn't win it by a wide margin. But it was wide enough to know that he won that fight. And yeah, I'll watch it again. I'll rescore it. Sorry, my voice is cracking. I'm getting over this little cold thing. But yeah, I'll watch it again. But I feel like, you know, Dmitry Bivol should be the undisputed light heavyweight champion of the world right now. And I'm kind of disappointed that he's not. Like I said, I'm heading to a fight tonight. I'll let y'all know how that goes. But until next time, keep your hands up, your chin down, your ass off the floor. Peace.